Wow, what you're about to see here is truly an eye-opener. It was to me. John Burroughs, retired US Air Force, was exposed to something in Rendlesham Forest that nearly killed him. Thank God he survived, because encoded inside his body are the answers to the secret of what he was exposed to. For over 40 years, John has sought answers, but he has a secret. He actually knows a lot about what it was he was actually exposed to, but it's still highly classified, and John is a loyal veteran. So he's seeking ways to reveal to you what really happened to him in Rendlesham Forest. In 2023, John formed a team of investigators to help him solve that disclosure puzzle, to find a way to tell his secrets, but by using unclassified and public domain information. James Warrow is our science researcher, Race Hobbs is our veteran broadcaster and phenomenon investigator, and I'm the filmmaker trying to pull all this together. We all want to help John Burroughs find closure by telling the world for the first time the big picture of what nearly killed him and injured other service personnel. John and our team are now ready to tell you the facts. Who, what, where, when, and most of all, why. What you're about to hear in this film is really fascinating, and I'm really honored to be part of this team. Revealing the truth that the highly strange is real and how its powerful capabilities are being weaponized.
These things are real, they're here, this is happening now.
Welcome back from all of us on the Rendlesham Forest investigation team. 2023 has come and gone, but not without us having a successful Season 1. And we are looking forward to starting Season 2 here. So let's kick off with a special edition. We've produced 7 shows with pieces of research and information covering a list of subjects, including...
Across the bonds of history, humanity has looked to the sky, trying to understand the mysteries of the universe. What is a UAP? The same intrigue formulated from the term UFO? Are they the same, or are they a part of something bigger, which may incorporate both scenarios? Why ask? Why not? The strange colored balls of light reported at the forest were similar to Foo Fighters of World War II. Pike made a link between the use of radar and the sightings of Foo in the war. Nearby RAF Baudsey was heavily involved in radar research, microwave tests, and drone technology, and he was suspicious that a military experiment may have affected something near the twin bases. Pike also noted how a large portion of UFO reports come from areas in the proximity of airports and military bases. But was there any concrete connection with Rendlesham? Toward the end of World War II, mission updates from the 415th Night Fighter Squadron took a mysterious turn. Along with details of dogfights over the German-occupied Rhine Valley, pilots began reporting inexplicable lights following their aircraft. Foo Fighters got the attention of Allied Command, who wondered if they were really a new Nazi terror weapon. Winston Churchill made these strange glowing balls his top priority. Why? Because the UK and USA suspected Germany had perfected a plasma direct energy weapon that they themselves had been working on and failed to perfect.
So in this program, let's investigate this concept. In the British Telegraph newspaper, somebody wrote, "Dear British government, it's time to wake up to UFO reality." The vital thing for you viewers to know is that Britain already has done an investigation into UFO reality. The MOD, the Ministry of Defence, commissioned a report, Project Condign, drawing on approximately 10,000 sightings and reports that had been gathered by DI-55, a section of the Directorate of Scientific Intelligence within the MOD. This report was released to the public in 2006, after a 2005 Freedom of Information request. This is the classic quote from the Condign report. It stated in its conclusions that UAP exists is indisputable, credited with the ability to hover, land, take off, accelerate to exceptional velocities, and vanish. They can repeatedly alter their direction of flight suddenly, and clearly can exhibit aerodynamic characteristics clearly beyond those of any known aircraft or missile, manned or unmanned. What you have to realize is that any Ministry of Defense, Department of Defense report is really looking at this question: are UAP a threat to national security, or aircraft or aircrew? The Condign report recognizes UAP as real and instructs RAF pilots by saying no attempt should be made to outmaneuver a UAP during interception. Oh, well, that raises a big issue, doesn't it? You mean the RAF intercept UAP? Apparently so. What most people don't realize, because the Condign report is so comprehensive, it specifically mentions the effects of UAP on airmen during the Rendlesham Forest encounter. The Condign report went on to help John Burroughs specifically unlock his claims for compensation. But to us, the most frustrating and obvious thing that media organizations and social media reporters into UFO phenomenon are totally missing is clearly stated in the Condign report, and that is how the advancement of plasma technology, lasers, quantum physics has been completely pushed aside by mainstream media in their oversimplistic quest just for a good flying saucer story. We want to understand what's going on and how it plays into the whole picture of UAP and how they've been weaponized. Current military technology and future wars will be fought with advanced physics. Clearly, some of that weaponization will be created from the study of UAP. So today, that's the focus of our discussion in this special edition. The question is, has the military weaponized UAP?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another season of Phenomenon Radio, the weaponization of UAP. What a fascinating season we had for season one, where we were able to come together with the likes of an amazing film professional in Professor Simon, retired military John Burroughs, who is an experiencer and one of the most high-profile military experiencers anywhere in the world. And then the intrepid work and in-depth, mind-cracking research from James Warrow. Our team has come together to make some really compelling short films that really have been well received, and we look forward to doing another season this year even better. So many topics that we covered in the subject of UAP and the Rendlesham case itself, because it is and remains one of the most profound events that still have living witnesses to be able to corroborate these testimonies and these events from all over the world. So it's paramount for us to understand that the effect of UAPs is much like the UFO subject itself. UFOs have crop circles, implants, abductions, and contact events. This is no different. It is absolutely no different when it comes to exposure to this phenomenon. Military witnesses are paramount in the work that we do. And everything that we will present is based and mired in fact. Reports, data, and everything is available for all of you to follow, just like we're doing it. We're just putting it together in a way and presenting it to you in another way that makes a case for what we feel could very well be some of the answers to this enigma. So without, sugarcoating anything, when you talk about the history of the highly strange world that we live in, plasmas and directed energy weapons, human exposure to UAP, and service personnel injuries, Orford Ness and other UK physics labs near Rendlesham, Cobra Mist and over horizon radar technology, and those questions that still linger out there, Foo Fighters and German radar.
Yeah.
So many topics that we're researching, looking for answers, and we're doing it all with the help of critical thinkers just like you watching here right now. There's so much more to reveal and more to discover, but UFO and UAP, Rendlesham Forest incidents, and the weaponization of the highly strange, that we're geared up. We've pulled up our socks and got our boots laced up tight. We're geared up for another season. So today, let's ask the question, has UAP been weaponized? And I want to bring in all of everybody unmute, and we'll get right to it. John, has UAP been weaponized, my brother?
I think before I answer that, I'm going to deflect to start with to James and the professor, and then I'll add my whatever they don't fill the blanks.
You never have liked leading off.
No, not really.
Okay.
But James, go first because he's looked hard at
All right.
the documents, the declassified documents, and the advancement of weaponization. So, James, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've been looking at quite a few things over these past few months, especially in regards to the effects of UAP, not only on people but on vehicles and electronic devices and such like. The issue we seem to have is some kind of electrical magnetic pulse kind of technology that seems to interact with people and vehicles, that seems to emanate from the UAP. It's something that during the Cold War, a lot of countries were worried about because of the effects of nuclear electromagnetic pulses. They was also very worried about non-nuclear electromagnetic pulses. The type of stuff that unfortunately in this country it's still highly classified. I found a report recently from the UK Parliament discussing such technology, and unfortunately it is still highly classified. Not only that, but they also monitor internet interaction between anyone that kind of discusses this or brings any of this information forward. Now, that in itself is a no-no, for me personally, because I do not want to deal with anything. I do not want to cross that line, obviously, for my sake and for everyone else's sake. But there's a hint there, I believe, into what potential this UAP, whatever it is capable of doing. What I also found interesting was in the Condign report, just the fact that the Condign report itself is looking at something that they apparently know nothing of, or they want to investigate. Because if it was something that had been generated that was generated by us, then one would be under the assumption that we knew what it was. But the Condign report itself is looking at things from the perspective that we don't know what it is. Now, whether that's to do with compartmentalisation of it, whether it was man-made or whether it was genuinely unidentified aerial phenomenon that was involved in Rendlesham, is still open to question. Although, when asking the MOD, I think John will back me up on this, when asking the MOD about this subject, they refused to answer any questions because of the future the future applications of such technology. Now, this leads us to believe that the weaponization of this technology is apparent, has been, and still is. But again, because of certain classifications of whatever this phenomena may create, there are restrictions on finding out exactly what it might actually be.
Yeah, very good, James. Absolutely agree. I think I'd like to make, I mean, can I answer the question, has UAP been weaponized? I think you need to know that since World War II, physics has been weaponized. Any secret advantage, any hidden fact of science could be of a military advantage. So it seems very clear that anything which is out there, and the Condign report specifically mentions plasma effects, we know that there are scientists in the UK and the US working on plasma technology and wanting to investigate the highly strange. If it can be actually utilized and weaponized and made into a technology, they would do it. How they would do it and what exactly they're doing, as James says, it's very, very dark. It's hard to know, but I can definitely say that there are laboratories since World War II who have looked at anything which is odd, which is out there, and would exploit it. They're being funded by military defense contractors who are also wanting to put forward novel technologies to sell to governments. So yeah, whether it's the UAP phenomenon and what is the UAP phenomenon is hard to know, but definitely things like strange frequencies and how it responds, how the human body responds to it, and plasma technology has been looked at and probably currently is.
Last year, we did 7 shows. The final show was on the Foo Fighters, okay? A lot of people contacted us and said, this really explained the phenomenon of Foo Fighters. So you could go back into the 30s and even probably farther back than that when they were starting to look at the weaponization, as the professor says, of physics. The interesting thing was that in 1960, the Navy studied the EM frequencies of planet Earth. They did, I forget the name of the project, but you can find it. And they spent a lot of time and money mapping the entire Earth and the EM frequencies. So they've been looking at this phenomenon that Condign talks about. And the interesting thing about Condign, which we're going to open this year with several shows involving Condign, the 38 papers that we're giving to Congress, the French study, and everything else that goes into the study of UAPs and how it relates to what we are dealing with, or at least one faction of what we're dealing with. We're not saying there's not something else out there. We're just saying this is what we're zeroing in on. And it appears to be, at least from the MOD and the DOD sense, that that's what they're zeroing in on how to weaponize this going forward, is the fact that you have these reports, you've had interaction, you've had advancement in military technology from this, starting as early, James probably can go back farther than that, with the Foo Fighters, because the Nazis were, or the Germans, because the Nazis offends people sometimes. The Germans were working on plasma cannons, and they were utilizing them during World War II. They were looking at all this technology and starting to utilize it in the 40s. So the interesting thing that stands out to me just recently is that Greenwald did a FOIA on the interactions between Grish and these agencies that were inside the DOD that have been exposed, and all those emails and reports are classified. And his question at the end was, what are they hiding? Well, the interesting thing is what they're hiding, and Grish kind of opened us up to that, was exactly what's being hidden in Condign, which we'll go into. The report was written, but it came from sources. The sources are all classified. Grish saw some reports and was briefed on some stuff, but when he went back to go to the sourcing of the reports, that was all classified. No different than the DOD has classified everything having to do with these agencies and their study and work on this. So this is highly classified, and the biggest excuse that you can get to, and granted, maybe it would upset, religion and all that, but ultimately this really comes down to the fact that whatever we're going to try to weaponize will never be declassified. So I'm kind of hurting people's feelings with this, but everybody that's sitting on the edge of their chairs thinking 2024 is going to be the year, nah, it's not going to happen. But we're going to do our best to break down the advancement from going way back to present day on how the UAP studies and physics, including quantum, has been brought into all this. That's the future of warfare.
We also have to look at the physics side of things in regards to economic espionage, corporate espionage. If they did, for instance, have a breakthrough, the last thing they want is for another country to steal that information from them. Now, unfortunately, over these past 10, 15, 20 years, lots of economic espionage has been happening in United States, United Kingdom, parts of Europe. A lot of that information has been going back to our apparent adversaries, or our economic adversaries. The last thing they would want is for any of this getting into the hands of our economic adversaries, because it's happened so much in the past, and it still continues to happen at lower levels than but Apple, was a fine example on, and Tesla, on people actually working within the company and actually downloading information and key codes and actually taking them back to a different country and handing them over to, a company that they got a job with, and they're getting paid double the amount they would get paid in this country, in the country that they obtain the information from.
Sure.
So there's a lot of that as well that needs highlighting.
Well, not only that, but I didn't also bring up AI and how this is going to play into all of this too. So fasten your seatbelts, folks, because this is going to be a wild ride this year.
I'm coming in here behind these guys.
No, do it.
There's not to follow up and kind of sort of close this bottle. There's nothing really left for me to say, other than the Condign report is the first thing that ever fell into my lap that proved that the government was actually researching this type of technology and this type of work. And what we got from it laid you on your back. I mean, it putting you on the floor is too short of a term. I mean, it literally was like getting hit by a haymaker, because I knew John Burroughs personally back then when this came out. This was back during the first season of this program. And I was there when it all kind of unfolded, but the research that followed definitely shows that this is government work being done on government stuff, and it was inspired by something else. And so that's, in the most basic term, at the most basic brain level which I possess, is the best way that I can say it. So, gentlemen, it has made for a very compelling investigation. Everything tabled, everything gone over and re-gone over and re-gone over again. But there is just so much out there, and it's ongoing. And again, I agree with everything every one of you just said. I was going to try to come in with a little bit on the AI deal, and then, John, he came in there with it. But it's the truth, because when you get to the quantum level, we're really in the waiting room over here, because stuff can be done so much, you know what I mean? And we're just trying to catch up. Look, having your own technology used against you has built empires throughout all of time. And it's not going to start today. It's been going, and it's continue to go. And we can't expect anything from the United States military or the world governments, our allies, or anyone else. We have to go out here and do the work that we're doing now, and dig and dig and dig and dig, and try to piece things together and get answers from old technology that we can walk up to today.
Right.
So we're going back and we're walking forward, because those breadcrumbs that have been left behind are the real gems that are able to get us some answers that derive from yesterday today.
And I'm sorry, Ray.
Well, I was just going to say, just like back in, what was it, John, 93 or whenever, when they rolled that stealth bomber out in Palmdale.
Yeah.
When you see that technology presented to you out in the light of day in the wide open, that they're not showing their aces. That whatever they've got tucked away somewhere else is far and away better than that. And
at least in the R&D stage,
at the very least, at the very least. But I'm sure that it was probably operational. I mean, I know they almost had to, because they were outed, right?
Well, something else crashed that they had to give up the stealth.
Right.
They had something go down in the
there were some circumstances there. So I think that's why you said what you said, but I'm not sure. But I agree. But, you just have to understand that there's a lot of things said, a lot of things told, a lot of things shown. And you have to kind of, disinformation never quits. It never quits. And one good, well done piece of disinformation could send 4 guys like us off, to Istanbul for 6 months. And the world keeps turning. I just think that we have to stay focused on the real evidence, because there's just so much stuff out here today. Yeah. Everybody and their brother has watched videos and started podcasts, and they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, to put it very, very lightly. And I'm that guy that's going to say that, and okay. I'll take it. But without shows like this, and I'm very proud of this project that I'm a very, very small part of, is coming back for another season, because it is all absolutely worth it.
Well, can I add a couple things I forgot?
Of course, John, please.
All right. Yeah. First of all, I'm not you're right, Race. There's a lot of people that don't have a clue overall. And what I mean by that is most people are still trying to argue that this is really going on. And in other words, they're still trying to convince the public that there's something out there. You know what I mean? And they're still trying to dig at the government on what they're hiding. Well, a lot of this stuff is hidden in plain sight. And what I mean by that, as things get declassified and pieces of information come out, you can start to put this together. The interesting thing that I forgot to add was a couple of things. Professor just did a little piece on his YouTube channel having to do with Cobra Mist and how it might have been something different than what the British government wanted people to think it was, or it could have been utilized in different ways.
Yeah.
That area right outside the back gate of Woodbridge was Area 51, okay, for the United States. Yeah. And the history of people went back and studied it would show in the middle of the late 70s, the United States had a big scandal going on with MK Ultra, the Vietnam Papers, and some other stuff. The Defense Department was under a lot of pressure. Programs were being shut down. President Carter was involved with that. And a lot of the technology that was being tested and worked on in the United States was transferred over to the United Kingdom through contract companies and American contract companies. And we're going to talk about that this year. Right. And so right outside the back gate area of Woodbridge and Bentwaters had some facilities, SRI facilities on there that I just recently got confirmation from Colonel Hull on. We had an interesting exchange after the Cobra Mist piece hit, and he admitted that there was stuff still going on with Cobra Mist from SRI at Bentwaters and other projects that were going on that he said he closed it with saying enough said. So he's well aware that there was technology being looked at. But one of the bigger pieces besides Condign that's been overlooked is a guy by the name of Andrew Pike. And he wrote a book, and he went into the fact that the government, and he got mad when I said this the first time, but it was funded through his university to go study the UAP phenomenon right outside the back gate at Woodbridge. And in his own book, and I don't have the quote right in front of me, but he said he quickly got involved. His study of the phenomenon quickly got involved, intertwined with the UFO world. So there's a lot of facts out there. And unless you want to study the history of the advancement of technology and UFOs, now called UAPs, you're going to get caught up in different things. But there's a lot of evidence that we're going to go over this year, including those 38 papers that were dropped into Senator McCain's lap right after I got my settlement. And one of those papers in the last hearing was submitted as evidence to the congressional hearing that just took place where Grish testified. Oh, great. So we've got a lot to cover this year. And we're going to go, like you said, Race, we're going to go down the facts of the advancement of weapons. And one last little tidbit. When I met with General Williams before he passed, I went over a certain area of Condign, and he was shocked that that area had even been declassified. But when I asked him about specific things in it, he would not go into it. And a letter was written for me by Kit Green that was handed over to the DOD. And a paragraph of that was classified also, having to do with the same thing I talked to General Williams about. So there's a lot of facts out there that we want to put together this year. We're past, I believe the four of us are past the fact that something's going on. We don't need to prove that there's something out there any longer. We want to try to get it put out to the public exactly what we feel, what we've uncovered is going on and where it's heading.
I'll tell you, our viewers are among the critical thinkers of the earth like no other. And they have doggedly been on us to summarize the Rendlesham Forest findings that we have so far and what we're planning to investigate in the new season. And, or in the next episode. They didn't know for having a new season. That's been a big topic, in the chat rooms and stuff. But, Professor Simon, why don't you give us your thoughts on a summary, if you will, for the Rendlesham Forest incident up to this point with all of the evidence that we have researched and sleuthed through, and then tell us a little bit about what, your input is going to be in the new season.
Thanks, Race. I mean, I was actually quite new to John and James and Race, and I, could offer some filmmaking skills. And I think what you guys have researched in season 1 the past year is everything you need to know about the history. And if you understand what happened in the past, who, what, where, why, and when, it started to unpick what actually might have been focused actually happened in Suffolk in 1980. And I think if you're interested in Rendlesham, because Rendlesham Forest incident for me was a door opener when I first was introduced to John Burroughs, and he actually personally experienced the highly strange, but more than that, he survived actually being ill. He actually has bodily, malfunctions caused by the highly strange. It became very real to me. And I think we have looked at all the possibilities, all the history, all the world phenomenon. And in 2024, we need to pull that and intend to pull that all together and use Rendlesham, use John Burroughs' effects to actually pull back the curtain from the people who are manipulating behind the scenes UAP and actually talk about what is actually going on. Cut through the crap and actually, expose some of the truths. It's a fine line because none of us want to tread on national security, but it's fascinating stuff. And if we concentrate and tell the story of Rendlesham Forest and tell the story of John Burroughs, who for 40 years has sought answers, I think it will actually shine a very, very interesting light on the whole phenomenon.
Professor, I want to I want to commend you on those words because I've known John Burroughs for a long time, and he's never been one of these figures in all that we're doing that has jumped from his event to someone else's and someone else's, and this case and that one and everything else. John has always been dedicated to December 1980, January 81. He's always been laser focused on what happened to him and his men and the guys that he worked with, and it's never been about anything else. And he's put himself on the slab so many times, and he's tried every medium you can imagine and every outlet you can imagine. I'm truly shocked, John, that you even get up in the morning and put your britches on and still have anything to do with any of us out here. Honestly.
Well, to be honest with you guys, the problem I have, because I had been gone a long time ago, once I had all the help I had to take on the government, and it was taken on the government. It was
that's an insurmountable amount of weight that I can feel pushing down on me. Just the thought of it, not even being a real figure where you have American statesmen stacking up out there to go to war with you on this.
But and it's true. I mean, the government actually tried to manipulate what happened in 1980 and say I wasn't even there. I wasn't in the Air Force from 79 to 80. I think it was 2. My medical records still, no one has access to them other than the DOD and the VA doctors that are treating me. So they really pushed hard. If you read the chapter in her book, Weaponization, where Cheryl Bennett talks about what she went up against through Senator McCain, she was working, Senator McCain was involved directly, but she was the aide that was working on this. Department of Justice got into this. The IG got into this, which rings a bell with what's going on today, where you have the IG looking at what's being hidden and what's not being hidden, what can be released or not. So I took the government on with a lot of help, and I got what I asked for. It was acknowledged that I was in. It was acknowledged I was injured during the event, and they provided care for me. But What happened after that was, so people behind the scenes that at the time had promised that they were really just in this to help me because they felt I was wronged, went public. That would have been Christopher Green. He went public on about Top Secret, laid out a statement about my records, what went on. Then they went into DNA, okay, and they did that in Annie Jacobson's book. And they've dropped my case on and off. Like just last fall, George Knapp started talking again about how I was injured in the line of duty. And that proves without a doubt that there's a danger to people involved with this and that I got my settlement. Then along comes Jerry Burke Corbell, who totally screws up what happened and how it happened. Okay. Yeah. And then also even Gary Nolan went on and screwed it up. Okay. So I've got this kind of weight over my head with the fact that these people are lurking out there, whatever their agenda is. Now, they claim publicly that the only thing they want is to get the truth out. Well, they're being disingenuous, and I'll tell you why. We've all looked into the dark world. We've all stared into the abyss. We don't have access to classified material, only declassified. But looking at the declassified material tells you just how dark the abyss really is. And the fact is that these guys all worked in government and they know darn well that this stuff will not be declassified. So when I say they're disingenuous, they know that there's never going to be disclosure. The government is not going to come out and tell you what they know. They may give you bits and pieces of it when it becomes obvious whether the technology we're operating or something leaks from somewhere else. But they're not going to open up their books and say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's our disclosure. Never mind the fact that the Pentagon has still to this day never been audited because of all the black programs and the SAP programs.
Right.
So, and what do you think all this falls under, guys? James, SAP, right?
Yeah.
That's what Greed said in his analysis of my case. The reason why my stuff is classified is because what happened to us out there falls under SAP programs.
Right.
So the best we can do is take a hard look at what's been declassified, which we're not violating national security. Take a look at the advanced systems that DARPA and everybody else is talking about, the 38 papers, the Condign report. What was the name of the French report, Professor? What was the French?
Well, the French government have a fantastic, open-minded, published and classified in categories of a bit like Close Encounters of how the phenomenon is actually seen. I don't know its name, but it's certainly published and it's public.
And then we have the 38 papers, which people don't understand, right?
Right.
Those papers were given to John McCain's committee, which funds, he was part of the funding in the DOD for exotic technology. They immediately went to McCain's committee after I got my settlement. And he was already read in to the secrecy of what was going on. And then they opened up 38 more papers, which most people have overlooked. They've published the papers, but no one's tried to dig into what those papers mean, to include what Condign means, the French report, and some other documents that James has uncovered with DARPA, the physics, quantum, and all that. The pieces are there. The problem is most people still want to think we're being visited from Zeta Reticuli, little green men or whatever are coming down and visiting us. That is not what's going on, folks. There are things going on that go back to ancient times, but we're going to do our best to try to tie it all together this year off of what we did last year.
Right. Good. Yeah.
I just want to say, John, you reminded. I'm sorry, Professor, but John, you reminded me, and this is just a shameless plug at this point, to be honest with you. But you can go over to Spreaker.com. Look up Phenomenon Radio, the original complete collection. And there you will find 4 seasons of the original Phenomenon Radio that John and I and Linda Moulton Howe did from 2015 to 2019. In that collection, you will find in June, let me look here, in June the 22nd of 2017, of the 2017 season, was that original broadcast we did with Cheryl Bennett. You remember that, John?
Yep. Cheryl Bennett came on and talked about what went on behind the scenes. Yes, she did.
Yeah, absolutely. She came. It was one of our most listened to shows that season. I'll never forget it. Among all of the shows that we did. But there's 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. There's a small portion in 19 before we ended the show.
Which was Gary Nolan at the end talking about the DNA.
Right. But we had we had so many compelling guests from Annie Jacobson, George Knapp. I mean, so many people came together. A lot of those people that are in those shows aren't with us anymore. These are for anybody serious about the Rendlesham case. You have to have these in your archives. You have to have these in your collection. And the Onyx Network is providing them to you, John Burroughs and myself and Linda Moulton Howe, for free. So you can go over there and download those classic editions. James was there with us every season, every show, live in the chat room, all along the way. This is how we all came together, though, in the end.
Another couple interesting shows. One of them, I think we lost that one, was the Bruce McAvee show.
Yes. God love Bruce. His audio.
He went into the different frequencies and how they affect what you see and how they affect you. And then we had another really good one, Project Green Glow. We had the guy that was running the project, and he actually slipped up at one point in the show and admitted that the stealth fighter in 1979 was picked up by British radar and observed. And that's when that completely changed. And that had never come out before. And that completely changed how the British looked at stealth technology. So even though the British and American government are close allies, there were secrets being kept by both sides on the different development of technology. And one of the FOIAs I got that we'll talk about this year in the show, I got from the British MOD when I was requesting information on the weaponization of UAPs. They threw the kitchen sink at me, telling me how they can't say anything about it because they are working on it, but it's all highly classified. Okay. And then one other thing that we're going to go into this year, and it's in the weaponization book, we're going to go into what happened besides what was going on with the UAP study outside the back gate, when Keach's chapter about how they were utilizing some of this technology. And James was the first one to figure this out, where you could take lasers and use plasma and do directional stuff with it. Wynn expanded on that and showed how they brought down a satellite. So besides what was going on at Rendlesham, at the time, they were bringing down a satellite, and people can say that's speculation. Well, Ben Jamison, which I've given you guys the article, James has it, found a major that was at Bentwaters that very early on he found this research where the major talked about they had a briefing the next day about a down satellite that was brought down, bound by us. There was an article written by Ben Jamison that he interviewed this major. They had a week staff meeting the next day that they brought down a satellite. So it's not speculation by Wynn. All Wynn did was show how it happened after this major had come forward. So we've got a lot of information this year, folks. So we hope you'll tune in.
And a lot of that, and I think it was the 2016 season was the first time we had Wynn Keach on. We actually had him on a couple of times on that series. And but folks, a lot of what we're presenting today derived from those days, from those 4 seasons of work we were putting together back then. I could go back because I play them from time to time and refeed on the Onyx Network. These classics, these Phenomenon Radio classics. I just played the Cheryl Bennett one last week, which brought me to bring this all up and remind all of you. But the content that's in those volumes are sort of a foothold into what has grown all the way up to 2024. So, with that, I want to jump over to James. James, what are your thoughts on the upcoming season, brother?
I think much of it's already been covered via John and Simon. Agreed. There's going to be obviously, I've had a few family issues, and I've been kind of away from things for a few weeks. But looking at going into the Condign report that's been mentioned, the 38 papers, some of the MOD stuff that John received, and literally just with other things I'm not really going to mention online at the moment till I make sure they're okay to mention. I've got to look at that as well. But yeah, literally just keeping the ball rolling, finding out as much more as we can as the years move forward.
James, let me steal that one for you. Yeah, when it comes time for me to say something, I'm just going to say we're going to keep the ball rolling. That's the best way to put it. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of effort, and there's a lot of resolution. It's just all has to sort of come together into something that the wonderful Professor Simon puts together on video that really helps compel those gears to engage and turn on a different way. And so, Professor, I thank you, my brother, for all throughout the season. It's just gotten better and better and better and better and better. The research got better and better and better and better and better. My voice got worse.
It's okay.
But I tell you, we have all behind the scenes battled through a hell of a lot the last year and a half. And you know, we full well intend on delivering at least a show a month with some really cool stuff sprinkled in between here and there as things come up. You know, there have been some really cool articles and things that have been created from the work that we're doing here on this platform. Yeah. And when you're doing that, you're inspiring people to take what you're doing and share it. And then they add to it. You know, they add ideas and angles and directions and information that, you know, could compel a different solution to the issue. But I'm just encouraged. I'm truly encouraged by the work that all of you got.
Well, Professor, I think we could go into, you can describe what happened to the Foo Fighters show. Shortly after the Foo Fighters show came out, your opening was used in a British newspaper article, and you didn't even get credit for it.
Oh, yeah, it was just maddening. It was in the Telegraph newspaper. I mean, it was a massive story that they broke as if they'd done the research. I mean, I've always suspected that there was something about Foo Fighters that were man-made, but it was very much James and his contacts who explained that continuous wave radar from the Germans during World War II could make this phenomenon effect that under intelligent control, following airplanes, you know, and that was just lifted from our program and credited to somebody else I've never heard from, you know, and it's like, well, in some ways it's flattering because certainly I now keep on hearing people going, oh, did you hear that Foo Fighters were man-made? Going, no shit.
Well, that goes back to James was involved with me in this one. When I came over to the UK in 2018, I was about to break the story the MOD had lied. And they were holding back documents. They had claimed that they'd released everything, but I found out through a FOIA they hadn't. So I came over, did a press release to all the newspapers and stuff. I was coming over, and I was there for a week. Nobody came and contacted me. As my plane left Heathrow, wheels up, the Daily Star broke an article that some local guy had done a FOIA with the MOD. And the MOD admitted that that all the files had been released. Well, I came back and he admitted after I got back to the States and found out about this, he admitted that he did that based off of my press release. Of course. So the government was trying to hide the fact that they were hiding stuff. And that's where we can go with this. One of the things we're going to talk about is the author of Condign. David Clark did a chapter in our book He was pretty harsh on him at some point. But the interesting thing, guys,
Yeah.
is this. He wrote a book after he did Condign, and it talked about a war in Israel. That book never got published. It never got pulled. What are we in the middle of right now? A war in the Middle East with Israel in the middle of it.
Yeah, and lots of advanced weapons being used.
Lots
as well.
of
You know what's crazy about that, John?
Yeah.
Is a fellow that you and I both know. I'll say it when we're off air, but he told me several years ago we would be embroiled in a war in the Middle East, and he is actually one of the periphery witnesses from the Rendlesham case.
Right. Well, and I'm not going against the guy, but I don't think it was a no-brainer. Something was going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. He was actually hired as a contractor. You know, the ones that used to be called mercenaries. He was sent over there to do observation. Right. Where the war broke out. So
I don't disagree with that. But the interesting thing was that Haddo pegged that advanced technology was going to start being utilized. Right. And it is. I mean, it's just like Andrew Pike. He published his book and he pulled it. Why? Right. Well, one can speculate that he went a little too far in putting out information that the MOD wasn't really happy with being leaked out to include that one thing that Wynn Keach told us was right after the News of the World broke, well, we've got the information now we're going to put out, right, James, about what exactly was the EM generator that the Margaret Thatcher classified and how it can affect plasmas and how it can be affecting what happened to us. And Andrew Pike told me that they were using these generators through the tunnels. But remember, now the tunnels were mentioned by people that were involved, but they were actually blasting the phenomenon with these generators and affecting the real phenomenon that's located there, which now is becoming more and more prevalent, where more and more information is leaking out, besides Sutton Hoo, that there is an actual natural phenomenon there that involves UAPs. So this was all the kind of stuff that was going on. Not only was there an advancement of weaponry going on with Marconi and stuff, but there was a natural phenomena being studied by the MOD. Oh, and one of the last things that's been talked about before, but we're going to go into this year. Guess whose father was in charge of the technology division at the MOD?
Who's that then?
In 1980. Do you know, James?
I do.
Yeah.
Do you know, Race?
I do.
Yeah.
Nick Pope. Nick Pope's dad. And guess what? Kit Green and him both got an award from the American government shortly after the Rendlesham Forest incident.
It was a massive, massive investment. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was in power. Michael Heseltine was the defense secretary. The amount of money that what became Star Wars or SDI, which predated Star Wars and SDI, was given to the advanced physics that was going on in the UK because they were like this. And where was it tested, John? Oh, in Suffolk.
Right outside the back gate of Woodbridge.
No way.
Right at Randlesham Heath.
Right.
And they were working on drones, plasmas.
Right.
What else, James, were they working on?
And all of this with the Russians right off the back door there.
Well, right. That's a very important part of the whole thing, the Russian part of it. Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
Not only that, but Professor, you broke the story that Cobra Mist might have involved an EMP pulse weapon.
Right. It's hard to actually say, but from my very good contacts and a lot of other people, the big clue is that Cobra Mist was pointing towards Rendlesham Forest. Cobra Mist was not actually pointing to the Soviet Union. I mean, is that true? Is it possible? And then the enormous piece of information is that the interconnect, the power line, was buried underneath the shingle bank, Orford Nest, Oh, from a government-built nuclear power station right to a over-the-horizon radar that only needed a 3-pin plug to, well, I mean, a bit of power to operate. Why did they have megawatts of power? And then just a tidbit of what we're going to be talking about, some proof, is that power supply went underneath U.S. Air Force Bentwaters, and it went on to Martlesham Heath. There's 2 lines. Why did Bentwaters need the same power as the Cobra Mist secret facility? We think we know.
Well, not only that, but then you have to shout out to Ian Ridpath. All the years that he tried to put the fact that the lighthouse was what we saw. Well, golly gee, James uncovered the black radar facility, that was built off the death ray, which is lasers, which was being worked on with STI right outside the decade. And the land system that was connected inside the lighthouse that was broadcasting EM frequencies besides what Cobra Mist was doing beforehand into the forest and right at Woodbridge Base. Never mind the fact that Colonel Hall just confirmed that SDI stayed, which some other people did too, and they set up a facility right along by the Rod and Gun Club that they were working on the advancement of Cobra Mist and SDI with the smaller antenna facility, that they no longer needed the large facility. They actually compartmentalized it and made it smaller.
You've nailed it, because, I mean, Cobra Mist, whatever it was closed down probably because of some deal. I think it was a Cold War deal, personally. But the real reason it could be closed down is the research was finished. It worked. But it didn't work in the way they wanted. What they wanted was it miniaturized, as John just said. It needed to be in the back of a truck. It needed to be in a container. It can't be this massive antenna farm in Suffolk. It needed to be developed.
Well, it needed to be, plus you had to be able to move it around, because all it would take would be one pulse to take it out. But the interesting thing is, Takaro told me this a long time ago, Chuck Takaro. He said, well, they discovered radar through death ray. And I forget what he said, the death ray, how they discovered that. But he said most of this technology was discovered when they were looking to do something else. They were working on the death ray when they came up with the radar. So they actually made this smaller thing, but they needed to come up with the way to generate the energy force. Well, that was the EM generators. Those were the EM generators that are classified right after the News of the World broke. Those were the generators that were creating the power to generate the pulses.
Look, people, what you've just heard here is amazing pieces of information. We're just beginning to tell you what we actually know. You need to watch what's coming up in this 2024 season, because we are breaking barriers like nobody has ever done before. We're not talking about unknown stuff which we're making up. We have the research, we know the facts. Stay tuned. Wouldn't you agree, Race?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I've been privy, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a broadcast guy, a former investigator, research into this. I've been into the UFO thing for over 30 years. You know, everybody that's watched me knows me, follows the station that I built, the station that I work at now, knows that that's my story. I had to quit all of my research and all of my investigation to do media and do broadcast to disseminate this information to people out here in the public. And I play I'm a very, very small cog in this engine, but I'm super proud to be a part of it and to work with the three of you. And, you know, I even had a thought that we might bring in 1 or 2 more people this year as not maybe like correspondents or just, you know, not experts, but people that have focused on other things. Because like I would really like to have someone come in and focus on nothing but disinformation research and draw a really pretty mosaic, draw a real fine mosaic of, let's bring all this together and present it to people on how it works. Compartmentalization and disinformation. The majority, guys, of the public have no idea how any of that works. you know, the biggest thing that I hear in people out here that don't pay attention to any of this, when, you know, because Race is a UFO guy, my relatives, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and family, is how could they keep that a secret that long, you know, and how could that, you know, not eventually come out and there's, you know, there's times where it has. There's times where one of these things or more of these things crashed and they had to go in and do things to prevent it from being a massive brush fire and getting out of control. There are a mountain of stories and information and data and documentation and research that, you know, some of our colleagues out here could help us with on little things like that on the side over here and to over here that will help support the volume of work that we're doing here centered around UAP and the weaponization of UAP. And that's just one example that I thought of, but I hope that this season we can, you know, we can bring some of that out as well. But I'm super encouraged that we were all able, despite a lot of the personal issues that a lot of us are having. James, my thoughts and prayers have been with you. I haven't reached out with you for an email or anything for some time, but John's kept me posted. My thoughts and prayers are with you and your father. And I want you to know that we love you, brother. And to, you know, to everyone out there, speaking for Professor Simon, for John, and for James, you know, we're going to do the best work that we can, and we're going to do the best we can to deliver it to you every month. And we hope that you can take this work in the future. I hope that there's someone, you know what I'm going to say? I hope that there's someone 20 years down the road watching this. You know what I mean, guys? Because it's real. I was here 20 years ago, and it doesn't seem like 20 years ago. But I remember what it was like 20 years ago doing UFO work and UAP work. It's not that far away, but I hope that there's someone, you know, in 43, 44 watching this somehow on some kind of awesome video drive and saying these guys were on the right track. It's, you know, come to find out these guys were the guys that put all this together. You never know, because just, you know, a very small group of guys that are focused on one thing can do some great things. I'm hoping that we're that group. Any last thoughts, John?
Stay tuned, folks. It's starting to get interesting. The song comes in mind, Race, and you, Professor, you should close the show with the magic carpet ride.
Right, it is a magic carpet ride, you're right, and it's amazing. I wish I could just go blah about everything that we know and we've talked about privately, but we need to pull it all together, make it into films and radio for you, make it accessible, and prove to you that we are doing good research and what we're saying is all based on fact.
James.
Yep. Yeah, again, they covered it pretty much. You know, as I said, we're going to keep the ball rolling. We're going to be bringing things to the forefront, hopefully, that will start making people actually scratch their heads and go, what if? I'm lost for words at the moment, unfortunately. I think everything has actually been covered, but I look forward to helping add the research to the next season, and fingers crossed it will go as well as last season.
Fantastic. For John, for James, for Professor Simon, I can only hope and pray that you're half as excited as we are that a season 2 is coming. So go back and binge watch season 1. Season 2, we've already got the first one on deck, and it's almost completed and ready to go. So they're going to start rolling, and when they do, they're not going to stop. We're going all the way through, folks. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for all of you. Make sure that you follow along with the show. Subscribe. It's all scrolling down there on the bottom for you at Professor Simon's YouTube, at our Phenomenon Radio Show YouTube. Subscribe and comment. Make sure you comment, because me and Professor, we're always reading those, and we do our best to respond back to everybody, because there's going to be a comment somewhere in there that's going to click something, and we're going to reach out to you and say, hey, I need to know more about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? It works, doesn't it, Professor?
Oh, yeah. Share what you know, because, I mean, I reached out and asked somebody, were you the guy who dug a hole in Orford Nest to lay the cable? You know, and to hear from that, you know, backhoe digger or whatever is just phenomenal, because it ties everything together. It makes it real. So, yeah, the truth is out there because you have the truth. Please share it.
Fantastically said. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you this season for season 2 of Phenomenon Radio, the weaponization of UAP.
Thank you very much.
Well, I like to dream. Yes, yes, right between my sound machine. On a cloud of sound, I drift in the night. Any place it goes is right. Goes far, flies near, to the stars away from here. Well, you don't know what we can find. Why don't you come